Hi, this is Raising Digital Humans, and I'm Jacob Yaffe.
I'm Jerry Penland Yaffe.
And
well, today we have it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have. And it all revolves around tech and issues that tech is bringing more and more to the forefront. That being, last year, the statistics came out last year that 1 in 3 men didn't have any sex last year, or 26-year-olds, many 26-year-old males are virgins, or of course this feels like an odd thing to say, and then there are schools that might be banning tech. There's 16 states that legislators are trying to ban tech from the schools. And so this all kind of, comes together in exactly what's happening. And I'm sure a lot of you aren't surprised by these conversations because, they're saying more and more 14-year-old males in particular are kind of becoming very desensitized to a lot of this stuff because of looking at PORN, is that what we're allowed to say on?
PORN.
On their phones.
And it's giving them giving them dopamine, the endocrine. I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly, but basically it's satisfying something in people's brains so that they're not going after relationships with other humans.
And that's the big thing I think they started talking about with social media when that first started arising, was that every time you opened up social media and then it looked like somebody liked something of yours or commented on something of yours. Because I remember when first couple years after Facebook, came around, that the dopamine hits from those things, were happening. And so now I think, with the convergence of your cell phone and the internet and the apps and all of that stuff, it's like you have a walking computer, of course. Makes sense, right?
Sure.
So,
and now with the AI companions, it's very concerning. And then, I don't know how soon it's coming, 5-10 years or whatever, but these robots are coming.
Yeah.
Good. Who knows where that's going to lead.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just terrifying that, you have that woman who married her chatbot in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
And now, who knows how many people are using these AI companions.
Yeah. And it's a big problem for adults as well. And, the thing is that there are a lot of lonely adults, a lot of lonely kids that live. So, it makes sense that they go, to their phones or they go to these things, And so it's like, has it always been that way where there's just like a large group of lonely people? Or do you think that's more of like a epidemic, like a situation from social media, from, these types of things? Have we created, the situation a little bit more, you think?
Well, now I think there's ways to avoid dealing with it. You think about, the history of humans. We were part of tribes.
Yeah.
And you wanted to fit in with the tribe because you feared being ostracized. If you were on your own, you would die.
Yeah.
So you wanted to fit in. But now, if you can get everything on your phone. You can order food. You can... You can find
groups of people, on all these different chats, Discord, and all of that stuff.
It just pushes the problem off down the road.
Yeah.
And then, if you look up the top 10 dangers to your health, loneliness is in the top 10.
Yeah.
So this is very important to deal with. And so the idea of screens is something we want to discuss. And, the gist is that if you teach your kids to be active participants in whether they're watching shows, movies, or they're, creating, that's much better than just being passive.
Yeah.
You want them to be participating in the experience, which is, I think that's why people enjoy going to live concerts or live shows, musicals, whatever it is, a play. It's much more of a human experience, whereas you just watch something on your phone, you're endlessly scrolling. It can be a very passive mindset.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Sure. And it's even an issue for me where, like, we're watching movies with the boys, and especially because we're watching stuff that I've already seen.
Yeah.
I'm, like, doing stuff on my phone, while we're doing that. And that's a big problem, like, because in a way I'm not even really paying attention, because sometimes they'll ask me a question, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
Like, even though I've seen the movie, I'm like, where are we? What's happening? So, I mean,
Sure.
it is definitely an issue for me as well. Like, you know, trying to use chat and Claude to, you know,
Sure.
I'm most of the time working on stuff,
Sure.
but, you know,
Yeah, and that's
definitely-
why we just, you know, we really want to encourage the our kids to build human relationships and, you know, be actively using their brains, even though they're consuming content via screens.
Yeah, and we are the ones that they're watching all the time too. So we have to fix our habits as well, you know, because
Sure.
I mean, in a way, it's like we're making it okay by staring at our phones the way that we do,
Yeah.
you know, and this is a continuous conversation between us, and neither one of us is doing anything to fix it. So we are not perfect, that is for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, to get
But
back
this is
to
all, it's all related, I think, because
Yeah.
you want, I think it's, you know, it's very disturbing to read that, you know, people are not willing to engage in relationships. You know?
to circle back to that. Yeah.
And I think that the
And-
screens give them the ability to kind of live without it. You know, it's really a terrifying thought that, you know, the AI is actually allowing people to kind of feed this, you know, this hunger in their minds for connection, or, you know, and of course they're listing chemicals that you're getting from it as a replacement, as a substitute.
Yeah.
Which, you know, we know now, you know, from the last 60 years of, you know, food substitutes are no good. So
Yep, and it for sure is just a different situation. Like when we go back to intimacy between people, you know, the reports of 1 in 3 men, like we said, and then 1 in 5 women, you know, no sexual activity within the last year. You know, adult sexual inactivity has doubled to 24% since 2010. You know, that's huge.
very big. Yeah.
You know, men aged 18 to 24 are the most affected. And then, you know, 1 in 8 26-year-olds, like we said, are virgins. 48% of married couples. That's a huge number. You know, 48% of married couples report no sex in the past month. You know,
That's
and of
crazy.
course, I think like it's possible, you know, ones with kids, sometimes it's a little
Sure.
difficult, but it's like, I know it seems so silly as a married couple to like plan it out, but it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I think that people need intimacy. I think that's a big part of this situation here. And, you know, 67% of Gen Z say they'd prioritize sleep over sex. Well, I mean, sometimes I do that. You know,
But people, you know, younger people, it's important, I think, to put up with the challenges, aggravations, self-doubt, whatever happens when you're at that age where you're trying to find your life partner. It's just scary to think that those years would pass them by because they feel satiated.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they're so young.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At our ages, like sometimes sleep is like,
Sure.
you know, it's fleeting,
Yeah.
you know? So,
Yeah.
but I mean,
sleep is important.
you know, what I'm thinking with all these things though is like PORN used to be in a back room. Do you know what I mean? Like if you went to the video store, they would sometimes have it like in the back room behind these like curtains, or like, or at least that's what I saw in movies, you know, or, you know, same thing with like finding the magazines and stuff like that. I think people always kind of felt like a little ashamed. You know what I mean? There was like shame that kind of went along with it and getting those things.
Sure.
And it was harder, but like with the internet, with the phones, and then, you know, loneliness becoming a more and more thing, it's so much easier to seek those things out now and not feeling that kind of like, I mean, of course, I think there's still kind of that feeling of shame that comes along with it, but you're not in public. Do you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
you could just be in your house and pull that stuff up and nobody knows what's going on, you know, and then they say it gets worse and worse and you're looking up worse and worse things, you know? And so it's become too easy now, you know?
Yeah, maybe, the ease of, you know, and the access is there. And, you know, just imagine like college stage, men and women, 18 to 24. It's, and that's when they should be dating.
Yeah, that's when we should be dating. Yeah, that's when we met. Well, when I was in college.
Yeah.
You know. But,
Yep.
You know,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
when we met, and then, you know, I think that part of
Well, here's what's Dr. So in her book, Sextinction: The Decline of Sex and the Future of Intimacy. She explains it like this. She says the brain's reward system cannot distinguish between a real win and a digital substitute. So the AI companions, social media, PORN, all trigger the same dopamine circuitry as the real human connection. Again, I just think that as time goes on, we're going to be discussing dopamine more and more and more, and really trying to separate what's giving you the dopamine from real situations or the digital substitutes, you know, because her point is that all this is triggered, but without any of the same effort or vulnerability or skill building that real connection requires.
Yeah, the skill, isn't that funny? Skill building. But I mean, it's true though, like skill building to meet people and to be like, hey, I like you. And, you know, that's actually like a skill, I guess, you know?
I mean, and you know, we've never had to deal with the apps that people use.
Yeah,
like,
we didn't have to worry about
Tinder
the
and well, the other ones, but there's a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, our relationship is pre online dating.
So but it's really crazy that you know, it's like this whole concept, you see it and swipe. I mean, it's just
which is
crazy.
Crazy though, because we've got a few friends that have met their spouses on these things, so it's not like we're like saying it's bad, because we've seen several beautiful relationships come out of you know, but it wasn't like, I don't think it was Tinder or anything like that.
But it was perhaps the difference is that
they're seeking out relationships, you know.
That, but also they were older when they started using them, so they had some prior experience beforehand.
They did have normal dating experience.
Yeah, whereas you know, coming up, and I think this concept of the digital substitute is very frightening, and I want to be looking out ahead of this to safeguard our sons growing up so that they don't fall into these like huge traps that I think are coming towards all of the young kids. You know, that's very
So to get back to the kind of like dopamine endocrine type of thing.
Oh yeah, this is go ahead.
You know, so they say it's not just behavioral. Endocrine disrupts chemicals in plastics, pesticides, and food. Really?
Yeah. So the disruptors, right? So we need, I guess, endocrine. We need.
Oh wait, did I just like completely skip?
Yeah, endocrine
Sorry.
disruptors. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So chemicals in plastics, pesticides, and food packaging are measurably reducing testosterone in young men. It's in the water, it's in the food supply. So that's why it's important to prioritize like real food,
if
sleep,
you can afford
and
it.
physical movement.
Yeah.
You know, really watch out for the ultra processed food. You know, so it's just important, you know, for as parents that we can like kind of raise our, if we have sons, you know. Yeah, it's just important to just make sure that they're thriving biologically. So that
and we've been looking at food a lot. You know, like we've got like an Amish store that's like 40 minutes from the house. I mean, it's a little bit of a drive, but I try to go like once a month and get like my flour there and a lot of this stuff, because I know that it's not going to have a lot of that stuff in there.
Right.
You know, so it's like if you have something that's like within that amount of time, you know, I'm not, of course, we live in, you know, near the Amish, but, you know, I still go to the normal grocery store, of course, you know, but I think if you can figure out a way to get some of those things out, if it's possible for you, and their stuff is not expensive at all. So it's not like I'm driving 40 minutes to spend more money. It's not that. In that case, it's actually cheaper a lot of times. So, you know,
it's just crazy to me that all this stuff is actually connected. You know, you think about like the food that your young kids are eating as they age, and, you know, like they could have malnutrition and it affects their testosterone or their estrogen or something. And then they have this digital substitute for, you know, relationships or something. And it just leads to like, you know, a young adult just really struggling. And it's wild how, you know, much you have to worry about what's happening, you know. On that note, you know, here's some research here. Early childhood development research, including from the American Academy of Pediatrics, is clear that ages 0 to 7 are when children build the foundational skills for human connection. Physical confidence, face-to-face social reading, effort and reward cycles, and emotional regulation. The AAP explicitly recommends that for children 5 and under, families prioritize non-digital activities like play and social interaction, which I feel like we've been really good at.
But I think about our oldest that went through COVID, during those first, from 1 to 3, we were out in California at the time, and we were locked down longer than anyone else.
Yeah.
And he had a speech delay and everything, and I think that played a big part of it.
Yeah.
Really only being around us and your mom. And so it's like, we don't think that the kid's that age. I mean, he's great now, but I do think, things like COVID, other decisions that we have to make that aren't in our control,
Sure.
Played a big part of some of the issues probably younger kids have now.
Yeah. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, the concept that I'm thinking of is like screens. It's something we have to contend with. This isn't, an abstinence for screens. I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's actually wise. We
love movies. We do movie night with our boys on the weekends, like
Sure.
Friday and Saturday movie night.
So it's more about like what fills the window of the screens, fast. So like one good thing that's going on is, our 7-year-old is making a film right now. He's directing, acting. He's helping me edit its own Indiana Jones style movie. We've been filming for a few weeks now, off and on, when the weather's, good for us. And we use a screen together and we edit it. And it's not using any kind of algorithm or AI. I love that he's had this idea and he's getting, so now when we're watching movies, he's like, oh, he's getting ideas for another movie.
Yeah, it's like a different type of dopamine hit now he's getting. It's like, thought dopamine and like ideas of cool things he could do.
Also, there was a sort of a great moment where he said to me that it's okay when you have an idea that's going to take a long time to finish.
Oh, he said that. You didn't tell me. That's awesome.
And I was like really impressed with that because, of course, you hear this all the time. Oh, these youngsters, instant gratification and all this. So having this project, I think, has opened his eyes to how long it's going to take. And now we're trying to
finishing the project is very important.
Yeah. We're very pushing him to make sure we actually finish it before he gives up. So what's proactive really is not really just about banning the screens. It's making sure that kids have earned experiences, real world creative stuff, and then maybe they can utilize screens, but there's physical activity involved, and just making sure that it's part of their life, but it doesn't, I guess I love this phrase now, digital substitute. Yeah. It can't just be like, a babysitter, which is, I think our parents had to contend with like the television as a babysitter, because I remember I was definitely like in danger of that, couch potato syndrome. And like the joke was like the kids who at the end of the summer were more pale than they were at the beginning because they spent all summer watching television.
For sure.
You don't want that, but the version of like just staring at the phone all day or the iPad or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think it's a big deal to decide that it's an issue for you. Like how many 18, 19-year-olds do we know that just sit there and just stare at their phone?
Yeah. Sure.
And it's like you tell them, but it's like they just don't. I don't know if it's just because they're addicted or they just don't care. I don't know.
I heard this.
I don't think they think that it affects them. I really don't know.
Yeah, I think it's got to be bad. I think that that sort of, that scrolling or the constant feed of something like TikTok, I think there's just this feeling of like, oh, the next, or you skip the next, and it's right there, rather than, even just watching a movie, it's just like one long experience that's like sustained. And it's frightening as these microdramas, they're here. I guess they're here to stay. I don't know, but I just feel like this can't be good for our brains. You know? I feel like it's an old phrase. I hate these things on
the app that starts with a D.
Drama Box?
No, Disney. I didn't want to say the name. Where they are making shorts, but the shorts are like 45 seconds.
Really?
Yeah, like little cartoons from like, some of their popular, regular shows. They're making like 45-second things. Sure. And it's just like, what is this kid going to get in 45 seconds? Like, it's, to me, that's crazy.
Well, it's because they're trying to compete with,
I don't want them to watch any of those
losing eyeballs
things.
to TikTok and YouTube shorts, so they're,
Yeah, no, I get that, but I don't know. I get not wanting to lose to that, but at the same time, like, not encouraging it, though.
Yeah.
So.
Sure. Yeah, it's very concerning, which is where this starts to get interesting, right? Because this is the source, NBC News and GovTech. Legislators in at least 16 states, including Iowa, Vermont, Virginia, Kansas, Minnesota, Tennessee, and Utah, have introduced bills this year to restrict educational technology in schools. Some go as far as banning school-issued devices and email for preschoolers and elementary students. Others cap daily screen time for older students or require new vetting processes for school software. The testimony coming out of these hearings is telling. In Utah, a mother told lawmakers her children were overwhelmed by constant notifications from online games and videos on school-issued laptops.
Yeah, because they're not. Crazy. I'm telling you, and I've brought this up. I will do like a club for the, I think it's 3rd to 5th graders. And most of the kids in the club, they're like very much so in the club. But, of course, towards the end, if there's a couple minutes left, they're all pulling out their Chromebooks. The school gives them.
Really?
And there's zero, I can tell, they've put no restrictions on these Chromebooks. They're pulling up YouTube, they're playing games, they're going on the internet. And to me, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like, we really try to put a limit. Like, our son has a Nintendo Switch, but he's allowed to play it for 1 hour a day. And it really seems like he feels like that's enough for him. There's sometimes we'll give him rewards. Like if he unloads the dishwasher, we'll give him another 15 minutes or something. And sometimes he wants it and sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah.
But the thing is that takes away a parent's ability to control their kid's screen time.
It does.
And it frustrates me so much because I don't want my kid to be able to just go on YouTube or just go on the internet. It's like they're handing them these things.
Sure.
For what reason?
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if it's a form of like keeping the kids occupied so that they're less.
Yeah, but we went to school for the same amount of time and we didn't have those things.
I know.
So I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand what's going on, I guess.
Yeah.
I would rather my son come home earlier than be giving those things.
I mean, all of this, again, it seems all related, this like increase in kids' inability to focus.
Yeah.
The substitute of the real connection. I mean, the fear of boredom. I mean, I love that we've started in our house that like the kids have to put up with 15 minutes of boredom every day.
Yeah. And when we tell them, like, I mean, you don't have to be bored, but you have to think of what you're going to do in those 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If you want to go play with Legos or if you want to go color or something like that, that's fine. You decide what you're doing. But you're not going to come to us for, suggestions or entertainment. This 15 minutes is just for you to figure out what you're going to do or just sit there and be bored. So,
Yeah, because these moments of boredom, I mean, it's funny, my brain goes to film and television, but I read this interview with Steven Spielberg, and he was talking about how the phone allowed him to never be bored. And he said he sort of missed those moments when you're walking to lunch, you walk back from lunch, and in those 2 walks, your mind is sort of just churning through the experiences of the day, and you're working through problems, and all of a sudden you get a realization, oh, this is what I should do with this for this problem.
Or you might see somebody you want to talk to.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times everybody's staring at the phones.
Yes.
And so it's just like that's another, I think, a loneliness thing is that we are purposefully avoiding each other with phones.
Sure.
So.
Or even, there's that comedian, Nate Bargatze.
Yeah.
He was talking about how I think he went on a trip and his phone broke and he just went to the airport, didn't have his phone.
Yeah.
And he said it was like awful because he's like literally there was no one to talk to because everyone else was on their phone. And he's like, try traveling without a phone.
Yeah, I remember the one we went to Canada. Oh my goodness, I feel like we're getting off topic. But years and years ago, this is before we had kids, but we went up to Canada for a job that you were doing. And when we got up there, of course, we didn't have like the international plan. We couldn't really afford it at the time. Remember, we couldn't use our phones, but when we were at the hotel to, use the internet and like text at that point.
Yeah,
but actually, I think at the end of the trip, we were like, this was really nice.
It was one of the best trips we've ever
had.
Yeah,
which is funny because like we look back and they're like, but we could do that, but we don't, know? So it's just.
Well, everything's on the phone now. You just.
Yeah.
It is frustrating. You can't get away from it,
Yeah.
which is why I was like, you can't. The solution is not to just ban screens.
No,
from
not
our
at
lives.
all.
We just have to really learn to deal with it. And I make the
use them as a tool, not an entertainment,
yeah.
station, I guess you'd call it. Yeah.
Sure.
So back to this, banning.
So, I mean, one pediatrician testified regarding the use of all this tech in schools and, zapping the kids' ability to focus. She said, enough damage has been done in the last 10 years. We need to put education back on track. So this is a system response. Parents and legislators are reacting to real damage. Some of this is reasonable. Protecting kids from unstructured, like you were saying, or unmonitored screen time in critical developmental years is legitimate. But blanket bans miss the actual question. What are kids doing when the device is in their hands?
Yeah.
A kindergartner using an iPad to watch a gamified penguin walk them through math is different from a middle school age kid with just unfettered access to the internet.
For sure, yeah.
And I think that most parents now, I don't think that there's parents that are unaware of this. Like you don't want to let your kid just have total access to the internet. I think most of us are like, yeah, duh. Of course that's not going to happen. But the fear is that the schools are handing them these devices, and when they're on campus or during the day, what's happening?
Yeah.
And just making sure that those safeguards are in place.
I do also wonder though if legislators should be pushing back on like Apple and, the Android phones and just being like, for adults too, like, do we really need this stuff on our phones? Like, how do we go back to just like, I don't know.
I mean, there's lots of, people are doing lots of things, but everything has to be, it's voluntary. They have, the brick
That's
app.
the problem is because we live in the United States, which we're so very blessed to do, and so we have freedom.
Sure.
To do what we want. And so, but to still use that, wisely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just being aware, just the fact that the parents are like, oh, this is happening.
Yeah.
You can really, and I really do think that the kids, like we are actually very upfront with at least our 7-year-old. He seems like he is, he mentally can take it when we were just honest with him. We say, this isn't healthy for you to have this much screen time, and he's aware of it, and we really try to spend as much time with them physically doing things and activities, and so that, just because they're not watching TV or using a device, there's still lots of fun to be had, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to just be like, oh, you're being punished because the TV's off or the screen is off.
Yeah, exactly.
There can still be. And I think, honestly, they have more fun.
Yeah.
They crave that.
Yeah.
I think making the movie and filming it was way more fun.
Oh, for sure.
Watching a movie.
Yeah, seeing something that you created. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, to go back to the loneliness and the intimacy situation, how do we, wrap that all in this, what we're talking about?
Well, I think the frame is really about we have to figure out our relationship towards the AIs and the screens in general and our phones.
Yeah.
And I go back to this analogy a lot, like humans now have a real strong understanding of alcohol and nicotine. We know the downsides of it. We know we know the nicotine is pretty much just all bad. But alcohol, we've had it in our lives for thousands of years. So everyone kind of understands the balance that has to be struck with alcohol. I mean, we know, of course, health-wise, we know you shouldn't have any of it. But we definitely know people have a glass of wine or something, and the balance, if someone has too much, you're not going to drink at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
You know. Well, we still are so new to having the internet. We're so new to having these devices. We're still learning our relationship. It's so finding that balance and realizing, hey, this is not a substitute for real human connection. It's like I joke with my brothers. I'm like, you got to think like a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old knows that it's not healthy just to sit there and stare at the TV for the entire day and not talk to any other people.
Yeah.
You know. And so having human connection is really important, and pushing them to keep, I guess the idea is they have to push through those uncomfortable moments, learning human relationships so that they're not afraid of it when they're 20.
Yeah. And I think, when we come back to, of course, kids growing up now are focus, because they haven't been at least affected in some way by some of this stuff yet. So they're still moldable, not moldable. I hate saying that. I guess they are moldable, malleable.
There you go.
But, thinking from an adult perspective, I think first and foremost, our job, whether you have kids or not, is to create peace in your home. You need to have peace in your home to be able to go out into the world every day. And I think one way of doing that as an adult, today, tomorrow, whenever you have time, pick up your phone, delete all the apps on there that you don't need, that just waste your time, that just are time suckers, the games, all of that stuff, and then, after you do that, start trying to put your phone down for periods of time during the day, whether it just be, if you've got, real issues with having your phone all the time. Like I've been trying to leave it in the other room when I go in another room with the boys. I don't do it all the time. Like I said, I am failing miserably.
No, you do pretty well, because a lot of times you don't even know where your phone is.
Well, that's true, but that's not purposeful. That's very true. But I mean, I think that's the thing is like the phone from an adult perspective definitely is bringing a lot of disruption into your peaceful environment that you should be trying to cultivate at home. And I think we are going to be talking more about peace of mind and phone addiction, all of that more as we go. And I think that, you helping yourself is going to help your kids no matter what.
Yeah, because we can model.
We can model. And then that's the thing. Like, we also just have an anger epidemic going on too.
Sure.
And it's because of the phones, like you have to put your phone down. You just have to do it. The anger, the anxiety, the loneliness, it's all coming from our phones, and so it's just like have periods of time during the day where you're putting it down. And another problem is with the phones, I'm sorry to rant about this, but like I'll go to the store or something and there are employees staring at their phones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I used to be, general manager of a few restaurants, and I would have to tell my servers all the time, do not take your phone out on to the floor. If you're serving tables, please keep your phone in the back. Yeah. Like, I can't believe I would even have to say that, So it's just, I think to really be able to help your kid is to start modeling, and if your kid has a phone or an iPad or something like that, go through that with them and be like, you don't need to have Discord on your phone. You don't need to have these things on your iPad. You don't need them,
right.
So.
Well, let's leave you with philosophy here.
Okay.
3 things. Make things, physical presence, anchored rituals. All right, make things. Any creative work with real world consequences. Drawing, building, cooking, filming, planting. The earned reward that no algorithm can replicate. And that's number 1. Right. Number 2, physical presence, roughhousing, sports, being outside with other kids.
Yeah.
Embodied experience that builds physical confidence and face-to-face social skills.
Yeah.
Which is really like going to help.
Yeah, with summer coming up too, that's going to be a really good opportunity to do that.
And then anchored rituals, which we talk about all the time. Weekly, offline, family-centered. We do Shabbat as a family every Friday night. We do Sunday dinners.
We do Lego challenges. The boys have really loved that. Like, just a quick example of the Lego challenge. And I think if your kid loved Lego, this is like awesome. But you give them like 20 minutes to build like an island. And then from there, you have little cards that read like a disaster that's going to hit the island. And then they'll have 5 minutes to build something to prevent the disaster from happening. So like even like pirates coming to the island, or a hurricane or something like that. And I'm telling you, even our 3-year-old was engaged with this for an hour. And he asked me this morning if we could do a Lego challenge. So, I mean, there are little things like that literally the time's going to go by even faster. Yeah. And they're engaged the whole time. So
yeah. But I feel like this is what I'm thinking about, is like you read all this news, you get freaked out about it. Like, oh my God, there's this like crisis for our young people. So what can we do to help our kids, to help like correct this wave that's hitting us like a tsunami? And it's nice to have actionable items that are simplified.
Yeah, and we'll post some of those things too.
Yeah, we'll put them in the video description.
Yeah.
Make things, physical presence, and anchored rituals. So remember to like and subscribe. We're doing all the research and reading and worrying and coming at you, trying to distill it into something that can be actionable for families to do. And just
general adults, we want
general adults too. Yeah.
Try to bring, like I said, bring peace to everybody.
Yes.
So,
Yep. All right. We'll see you on the next one.